Well, good evening, guys. Happy first day of October. I know the market was kind of weird today, but we were able to take some advantage of some opportunities and end up having a pretty good day on an otherwise slow Monday. But today I want to talk about scanning for stocks, how to set up certain scanners, and what to look for inside these scanners. And a lot of this is based on the individual. I would like to point that out that people who have different preferences and price action, maybe how much the stock costs, and whether or not there's swing trading or day trading and breakout over critical resistance. They need a lot of volume. A lot of these things dictate how you set your scanners up. So hopefully we can kind of brush a general picture of how we're going to set these up through ThinkOrSwim, and whether or not ThinkOrSwim scanners are is the right way to go. So today we're going to talk about this. Is going to be short and efficient, no longer than I wouldn't say just content, maybe a half hour or something like that, and then we can obviously take questions as we go along. But the first thing we're going to talk about is scanning for stocks using ThinkOrSwim. I mean that's solely the software platform that I use to scan for stocks. I use FinViz for a more fundamental analysis, checking share float and things like that. But as far as strictly scanning for stocks, the only platform I use is ThinkOrSwim, which is pretty much the only way I know how to do it. I've been using it for so long. Then we're going to jump right into how to set up custom scanners. Then using ThinkOrSwim predefined scanners, I use those on a daily basis. I know that they are preset for you, but I think they're still relevant. I still think they have some useful and nice scanners out there. And then we're going to wrap it up with some questions. Maybe you guys have some questions that specify towards your needs. So the first thing is, our ThinkOrSwim scanners, are they efficient? Are they good enough? Are they the right thing for me? And there's pros and cons to ThinkOrSwim scanners, just like any other software platform out there you can use. I know most of us in the chat room use ThinkOrSwim, so this information won't be so new. One of the pros for ThinkOrSwim is that scanners have high flexibility. You can really customize each and every one of your custom scanners to your preference. You can make one scanner that you use on a daily basis, but then you can add a wide variety of study filters and option filters if you're into options. And so it has a lot of flexibility. There's tons of different RSI scanners, and Bollinger Band scanners, Ichimoku cloud scanners, and things like that. If that's your preference, there's an adequate amount of different ways you can go about that. And also the predefined scanners, as I was saying earlier, they're relevant and they're useful. I mean, I use the levers and losers predefined scanners on ThinkOrSwim on a daily basis. Just every single morning. And they also have a percentage gap up and percentage gap down that I use on a daily basis as well. And so the predefined scanners are very, very relevant and useful. And if you didn't set up one custom scanner, you probably could get through the day. You probably could get all the relevant information you needed just from those scanners. The cons, I would say that there's not that many cons, but one of them would be the large amount of studies and filters can really cause confusion unless you go in there and you really start figuring out what they do and how they search for and what they're actually searching for. I was saying earlier, there's an adequate amount of filters you can use, but the study filters can get into the 10s, 20s, 50 different scans. It can kind of cause confusion, especially if you don't know exactly what it's looking for. It doesn't really provide a detailed explanation of what that particular study filter would go and search for. So you have to do your own research on that. And any small errors inside in any of your custom built scanners will cause the entire scan to fail in finding what you were looking for. So if you botch the range of say volume, and instead of putting 100,000 you put 10,000, well, all the other filters that you use on ThinkOrSwim for that for that custom scanner are going to be null and void because they all work in conjunction. So for those of you who are either don't use ThinkOrSwim or maybe kind of new to ThinkOrSwim and really just want to get started with this, it's really easy to find the custom scan builder. The first thing you need is you need to open ThinkOrSwim. You have to have a ThinkOrSwim account with TD Ameritrade. You open ThinkOrSwim and there's a tab on the top. It says Scan. You click the Scan tab, and if you have ThinkOrSwim and maybe you've already been messing around with it a little bit, or maybe you have an account but you don't really use it a lot, you kind of stick to the predefined scanners, which is fine. Maybe you've been playing around with it. You need to reset the scan to default. The reset scan in the action menu on the right hand side. So you want to reset that to the default. That way we can have a nice clean slate to work with in creating a custom scanner. And then at the point you build the custom scan to your preference, which we'll talk about later in the webinar, and exactly how to build one and what to look for in building one. So there's really three critical components of building a ThinkOrSwim scanner and searching for any of the stocks that you need to. And it doesn't really matter your preference on how you trade or what you're looking for to trade. You're still going to need these three critical components inside the build of your ThinkOrSwim scanner. The first one is volume. You need a specific range of volume, and if you're looking for technical breakouts like we usually build these scanners for, that's usually what we look for in day trades. You need the specific range of volume to match up or align with stocks that are reflecting that to get that stock with a technical breakout maybe approaching. So you need to have the right range of volume, and we'll talk about that later, what the right range is. There's a percent change gain or loss that scan setup component that you need to have for your scanner, and that's really defined stocks that have an adequate range and upside. You don't want to look at all the stocks that have the right volume, but maybe 20 or 30 of those stocks might be a really high float gold stock that may be up 1%, 2%, but have 50 million in shares traded in volume. Wait, it matches your volume scanner, but percent change is there's no movement there. It's very sideways, very tight range, and really not worth trading compared to the potential upside it's worth. It's really not worth even looking at on a day trading standpoint, unless, again, this is something I went back to before. It's really all about the individual preference. Maybe you are really focusing in on swing trading, multi-day swing trading, or then you can adjust your percent change to maybe to really look for a smaller range of percent change because you are looking to swing that. So again, it's when building these scanners, keep in mind that even though we are brushing a general picture of how to build these, you can tweak them based on what you're looking for out of them. The last price is that you need to limit scans to stocks within a certain price range, and that's again built on preference. But if you are somebody who wants to trade only large cap stocks, you wouldn't have your ThinkOrSwim scanner looking for a 50-cent stock, and so you need to have a range of limit that scans for stocks within that price range. And again, we'll go through that later on in the video on how to look for those type of ranges. And then to really customize each individual scanner to look for different things, you can add an additional study filters. And using these specific study filters kind of hones down your favorite patterns or your trade strategy and what you're looking for specifically. So outside of the three critical components of ThinkOrSwim scanners, it's the fourth component, the additional study, that kind of separates each of these custom scanners to where you can build one based on your preferences. So the first study we're looking into, and this is probably the biggest component of any day trading, if your analysis is volume, how much volume does the stock have? That really dictates whether or not any of these technical breakouts we're looking for, or any of these stocks that we scan for, are actually going to be worth it. And you can kind of explore different volume ranges in each of these custom scanners. The standard volume that I like to look for is 500,000 minimum on that. Then that's an average volume. That's kind of where you want to hang around. You don't want to have if on a day trading standpoint, you don't want to have too much less than that, because you need that volume to bring in momentum and push those breakouts up to to a price target that's worth it for your upside. You also have, if you are looking for swing trading or slower mover stocks that you can hold for a day, two, maybe a week, that don't have a lot of volatility, don't have a lot of range, that where you have to be constantly looking at your phone while you're at work or something like that. You want to swing trade to a point where maybe you can hold a couple of companies for a few days, just because it fits better with your schedule. And with that, I would recommend setting up your volume range with at least 300,000 minimum shares traded on an average daily basis. And for high volume breakouts, this is the main runners, the main news catalyst stocks of that morning, things that everybody's eyes are on. Most momentum plays are in this category of a high volume breakout scanner type range, and that's sitting around 750,000 or more. Typically, you can see, and especially when we get into the end of the year where the volume in the market in general picks up, you'll see in the 10, 20, 30 million shares traded in one day. But for the very minimum of a breakout that you want to look for is sitting around that 750,000 range. And like I said, that's the bare minimum. The higher the better. Percent change is that next study that really dictates the amount of upside you're looking for and the amount of volatility and range that stock has going into the day, and really it helps you separate the slower movers from the faster movers, and stocks aren't really worth looking at. If it's a 2% gain, but with a million shares traded, it can fall under your volume scanner, but show up on your percent change scanner and just add to a list of stocks that you won't be interested in trading. And I'm looking for some of my scanners for maybe swing scanners or just maybe some reversal patterns. You're looking at a minimum of 5%. I mean, 5%, that's the minimum percent gain that I want to put in my scanners to pick up the stocks that are moving that day. Anything less than that can be attributed to most different, just maybe just a good day. But 5% or more, especially right off the bat, when you're scanning for these stocks, usually indicate maybe a news catalyst, a positive news catalyst was released that morning, or any type of news or any type of momentum causing attribute to these stocks that would make it push up to 5% or more. Once it gets in that 5% range, that's when I start get interested in it. And that could be, again, it's different for everybody, just depending on your trade style. But that minimum is 5%. And then you don't really need a maximum, but after 30%, things start getting a little overextended and very vertical at that point. And you probably, if it's something's at 30%, you probably already know about it. It's probably been popping up on a bunch of different scanners already, and maybe it's gone through the chat room a lot. So, but I would say that 30% after 30%, that gain starts to, especially on a daily basis, starts to get a little overextended and a little unsafe to trade. The last price is, like I said, that's the price range in which you're comfortable in trading with. And I do want to point out that everyone is different here. This is one of the studies that really separate the preferences, and where you can find your own way and hone your trading style based on these scanners. I always suggest find your trading style and what you may feel comfortable trading in a different range. It may be different from me, and it may be different from CAF or anybody else in the chat room. But that's really, when you build these scanners, you're setting it up around your trade style. So just know that everyone is different. You don't have to follow any certain type of last price scanners preset or anything like that. Having said that, I like to set my scanners up for a bare minimum of a 50-cent stock, is really around the minimum. I do have some a scanner that I look at every now and then for, very little, low float, 10, 20, 30-cent stocks that may have big gap up news catalyst. But for a typical day-to-day basis, I want to look at a bare minimum 50 cents. And around the $25 level is as high as I feel most comfortable with. However, I will set scanners up for higher price stocks than that. That's just the range that I typically like to feel most comfortable around. But this varies, and it's flexible, and it really depends on your trading style, what you feel comfortable with. I know we traded TLRY in that $25 range. We just kept following up to that $300 mark. So, and traded all the way up. So just because I typically like to look in between 50 cents, $25, doesn't mean that I won't go out of that range. And that's what's so flexible about it, which makes it so diverse for everyone and why it's so different. This is how, from this point forward, it gets to where the preferences start to matter more and more. And from this point forward, everything becomes more generalized. But again, as far as scanning for stocks, and there's some general points that we can make that really bring the picture home. So some additional study filters, and these are just ones that I would typically tag on to the three critical components that you need for a custom built scanner. There's obviously tons. You can go look at ThinkOrSwim's additional study filters. There are, it's just a massive amount of different study filters. You can add on as many as you want. It's not like it's not restricted to maybe just 4. You can put it on there as literally as much as you want. You can play around with it. This is something I suggest playing around with and finding which ones you like to stick with, and finding which study you want to add on to your custom built scanners. But the volume change, that's just the things below these bars didn't save on here, so I apologize for that. I don't even know what that is. But the volume change is one additional study filter that I like to tag on. What's the volume change over a course of a week? Because if there's an unusual amount of volume, or maybe a 20% increase in volume, then we know that there is some kind of news catalyst attributed to this increase in volume. And increase in volume is what picks up momentum for most stocks, and the quicker I can find that volume change, the better. Unusual volume is a little bit different from volume change, is because unusual volume is a stock that is gaining unusual volume on a specific time period, and a volume change is a change over a range of time. An unusual volume is just more of a specific, like maybe just today. It had unusual volume just today or yesterday. Volume change and more relates to the change of volume over maybe the last month compared to its normal relative range. Near highs, these are really good ones. There's also near lows, but I don't typically look at that. Stocks they're nearing its 52-week highs, or maybe on a 30-day highs. You can adjust the period of time on your scanners to isolate or hone in on a time frame. So I like to look at 52-week highs. Those are typically the strongest momentum related breakouts or action related to those near highs, because it approaching a near high of, let's say, yesterday's high, it would have 1,000 stocks on it, and the move wouldn't be that relevant or critical because that was just yesterday's high. But looking somewhere at the 1 year, that 52-week high level, and that's more of a significant momentum, milestone type thing. And then there's pre-market and after-hour percent change. This is how I look for gap up or gap down change in stocks, either at, after hours, after the bell rings, or pre-market before the bell rings and we're doing our research. This is how, and this is also in the lovers and losers section of the predefined scanners. But this is when I look for on a day-to-day basis, having the pre-market and after-hour percent change. It helps me pick up companies that release news or maybe running on some sort of momentum, whether it be news related or not. This picks up all types of momentum or percent changes, gainers and losers. It can pick up any of the two. So it helps me if a company fails its it has negative phase 2 trial data, this will still pick this up because it is a percent change, and not necessarily isolated to just percent gain. And to me, that's important to pick up both ways, because there is still opportunity for gap downs and things like that, because as you get at that point, it creates gap fill, technical patterns, and other opportunities. Maybe it's really oversold and then it's starting to curl, and it's near a support level that it has historical support at. So there's some opportunities on gap downs as well. So I don't isolate it just to pre-market or after-hour percent gainers. Just the change study filter allows me to look at both ways. So moving on to these preset scanners, and again, there's nothing wrong with the preset scanners. I use them every single day. They're great, and I think they're very relevant. The percent gainers and losers, we saw that on the public. There's a public section of different scanners you can pick up on. If you're an ETF person, you like to trade ETFs, there's an ETF predefined scanner. If you are into options, there's an options predefined scanner. If you're into futures, there's a futures predefined scanner. And so there's a copious amount of predefined scanners that can really get you in the general area, put you in the right direction of the stocks that you want to look for. And then once you get a feel of what the scanner's trying to pick up, then you can kind of move on to the custom built scanners and really hone the scanners around your trade style. But the percent gainers and losers, this is different from what we were just talking about with the percent change, is because the scanner for percent gain is going to only isolate the percent gainers. And so it's going to, all the percent losers, which again has less opportunity, but there is still some, it's going to have, it's going to pick up all the gains, but, just kind of cut out the losers. And maybe that's your trade style, so you're going to use the percent gainers. Maybe your trade style is to trade patterns of, retrace patterns or oversold patterns, but then you're going to look at the percent losers only. So this kind of helps you isolate either gainers or losers depending on your trade style. Gap up and gap downs, these are also in the public section. These show you, and these are nice because these show you pre-market and after-market gap downs and gap ups in the morning. So it's right off the bat, you can look at gap ups and see what's going on in the morning without having to use any other scanner. And at that point, you can start checking out news, doing research. Pre and post-market movers, these are the movers that are strictly isolated to news catalysts. Gap up and gap downs can be anything. They can be pumps. It can be news related. They can be for any reason. There's a gap up or gap down on a stock. It's going to pick it up. But for the most part, pre and post market movers are going to pick up the stocks with that, with the major news titles or the major news catalysts for the day. And it also shows you, by volume, how much each stock has in volume, whether or not it's in pre or post market. And again, the new highs and lows, those are something that you can add in your custom built scanners, in accordance to the other specific ranges you want to add on to. But if you're just looking strictly and you don't care about any of the other ranges, or you're just looking strictly for stocks that are approaching new highs or new lows, you can use this preset default scanner for strictly looking at these types of plays that have no other of your trade. There's nothing with your trade style associated with it. And I like to before I go on, I like to have, and a lot of you see my ThinkOrSwim setup. The way I have my ThinkOrSwim set up, I have quite a few different scanners going down the left side of my ThinkOrSwim platform, all searching for different things. And I have 3 or 4 scanners that I will look at consistently. And then if there's something I want to look for, so maybe I'm interested in swinging something, then I'll look at scanners that are specifically for that, for made for swinging in stock. And if I'm looking for something to day trade that I can't pick up on my other scanners because maybe volume is an issue, then I'll look at something that, or I'll just make another custom scanner real quick that doesn't have the range that I typically look for in my standard scanner. So the flexibility there is very nice for having a few different scanners that maybe are similar to your custom scans, but have 1 or 2 different studies that separate the two, and you can kind of get a better look at the entire market and make sure you don't miss out on any opportunities. So thank you for listening. I'm gonna take you to my ThinkOrSwim platform. But before I do that, do you guys have any questions at all? Are you guys still following me? Am I making sense before I move on to the ThinkOrSwim and kind of show you my scanners and what I use on a daily basis? Everybody all good? Because now we have this. I wanted to paint a general sense of, how to build these custom scanners through ThinkOrSwim, and make sure everybody's comfortable with ThinkOrSwim and the scanners that it has before we move on to looking at something more, diving into these scanners more in depth. By the way, I have. First off, this is a new. I'm not using PowerPoint. I'm using PowerPoint now, but I did this program I built. I'm using a new website. It's a fancy little program, and I can download it as a PowerPoint, which is what I'm using now. But how do you guys like this? You guys like the way this looks, or do you want me to go back to regular PowerPoint next time? I need some feedback on this new platform I'm using because I think I like it. Yeah, it's good in the eyes, isn't it? It's a little different from PowerPoint, and some things. It just looks. I mean, it's very nice and clean. So I did like it. I just want to get you guys feedback. Cool. All right. So this is good to go for next time as well. I also have these nice little cute badges at the bottom of the screen for going from left to right. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you guys don't follow us, this is where I insert a pump. I try to pump my social media, insert that kind of thing. It does look much more professional, doesn't it, JV? I think it does too. So yeah, very nice look. Insert pump for go follow me, shout me on social media. Follow KF Investing. Yada yada. Thank you guys for bearing with that. Hyperlink them. I will hyperlink them when I send out the recording, or maybe I'll send out the actual PowerPoint for you guys. So let me go ahead let me make sure that this screen transferred over audience view. Okay, so everybody's switching over with me. So now I'm on my scanner. Now, so I have these scans already here. So like I was saying earlier, you want to go to the action menu, you want to reset the scanner. Hit yes. And so this is what your base default scan setup should look like. And from here you can start building on to put the 3 critical components in, and then add on as many study filters, or you even have fundamental filters, which I didn't even touch on yet, that you can do to basically hone in on things that you want to look for. For the stocks, remember the 3 different components that you need. For the first thing is volume. You want the 300,000 volume. The maximum isn't really relevant. We know we can't have too many shares traded. So you don't want to put in. I mean, this defaults to 200 million, but obviously you don't want to have a max. Then the last, and this is in no particular order, by the way. It doesn't matter in which order these components are in, or these filters are in, just as long as they all align with the stock. The stock all aligns with all 3. So we're going to put 0.5, and this does matter, the max, because obviously I'm not going to trade Amazon every single day. So I'll put 25. Right, so just like that, and it shows the range on the scale, basically what you're looking at. So we have these 2 in, and so we can put I already put it last. So yeah, net change, but we want percent change. Net change, be sure that you don't confuse the two. Net change could be like, it moved up $1 today, which is fine, but in percentage gives you a better reference to how the stock's moving. 5%, and again, this doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter how high it gets. I was saying after 30%, it can get a little overextended, but for the most part, especially with parabolic penny stocks, it's hard to put a cap on something like that. Okay, so now I was actually surprised that, after the after hours it would actually pick these up. So here's the scan. You can see that it's showing 50 of the 69 stocks that currently fit this bill. So that's quite a bit. If whether or not you want to go through all these is up to you. But we will add a study filter here in a second. But you can also, and I already had this as the way that it's ascending. I filter mine, or I sort mine by volume, so the volume's on the top. You can customize this any way you want. So maybe you want to filter by the high, of the day's high, or maybe the low. Maybe you want to filter by the percent change. You see, NEON neon's up 965% today, which is unbelievable. But look at the volume, not really there. Since volume to me is one of the most critical indicators you can look for, and one of the most key components in any type of day trade, especially in penny stocks. Volume is the number one thing for me. So I sort my searches on all my scans by volume, so I can see where's the momentum lying at. Where's all the momentum? Where's all the traders? Where's all the eyes at for that day? And so you could really get away with this type scan, looking at the minimum volume, minimum price, and percent change. Hey Ruben, what's the difference between percent change and net change? Percent change is the percentage of the gain. So like if the stock's $1 and it moves $1, the net change is $1. If it went from $1 to $2, then the net change is as a $1 move, but the percent change is the percentage of move. So it's 100% moved up all of a whole another dollar. So it's 100% percent change versus it's a $1 net change. It's the same. It means the same. It's just reflected a different way. When we look at net change, that's all the cost of the stock has a lot more to do with it. It can kind of skew the net change a lot because on GE, it being $12.09, well, the net change is 80 cents on that. But if the stock was $1, an 80-cent move on $1 obviously has a much larger percent gain than just 7%. So the percent change it gives a better actualization of what the stock is, how the stock's moving, or the actual gain of the stock. And it just kind of takes away that flexibility and that fluctuation of the actual cost of the stock. Getting in the net change, kind of the cost of the stock starts skewing that, and with percent change, it kind of uniforms everything up. And because a 67% change on an $8 stock and a 67% change on a $100 stock is still going to be a significant percent change of the day. However, net change on, as you can tell, an 80-cent net change on GE wouldn't really add up to much on it, and it's an 80 cents change on like Netflix. So it kind of just uniforms everything in the percent change, as it scales off of a percentage and not off of the net change, which is more influenced by the actual price of the stock. If that makes sense. I hope I answered your question, Ruben. Okay. So yeah, it just kind of takes away the price and how it affects. But then you can go in and you can add filters for stocks. You can add a study filter, and this is where things start to get flexible, and this is where things start to get more personalized for how you want to trade. There's different key indicators, and you can segment them by whether or not they're bullish or bearish candlesticks. You can segment them by the way that the corporate, maybe they have earnings coming up. So now it will only search for these studies of the first 3, plus they have to be in earnings. And so when you go through here, this is something that you can come in and play with. And I would recommend building, 5, 10 scanners. Maybe not use them all at once, but just have them there on things that you wanted to mess around with. As the market's open, maybe you want to look at a momentum crossover. Maybe it's the momentum is going from negative to positive over the last 12 days. The periods over here for days over the last 12 days. And so now these are the ones that have that have a negative to positive momentum. So the momentum is swinging into a positive range of momentum. So there is building momentum over the last 12 days. And so maybe this is good for swing stocks, or maybe this is good for trying to find stocks before the breakout. NEPT, we saw make the big moves today. So it's going to show up from the negative to positive, because before today, before it had that big parabolic move, it was probably in negative momentum. It was probably in a downtrend. And so this is some of the things you can do with that flexibility. I could actually add another study filter to that too. And again, the more filters you add, be aware that the stocks in the search results have to agree with each and every one of these. And so if you get to the point where you're not able to find as many stocks, it's probably because you need to generalize your search more. And the period also has a lot to do with it too, whether or not you're looking at maybe on this momentum crossover, a negative to positive move over the last 12 days, or maybe the last 12 minutes. And so that's, this is important to have for the period. And on these, the period is only applicable to the study filters. These three components are, it doesn't matter on what period. It's always going to be that day. Stocks that are trading at 300,000 minimum so far that day. And these things are also automatic. And maybe the stock's not trading at 300,000 shares yet. It approaches it, and maybe halfway through the day does reach over that threshold. These scanners will update themselves. So this is the main base of the custom scanner that you're going to want, and then from there you can build on. If I use, like I said, I only use 2 or 3. I use 3 basically main ones. The breakout scans I have. You can see here I have a volume change, and this is, I'm sure people who haven't had a chance to really play around, this is going to be helpful. Yeah, I sure can. I'll show you that too. So this is what I look for from my breakout scans. As you can see, I actually had this one at 40 cents and $50. But the volume change, the volume is at least 10% greater than 5 bars ago. So as volume increases 10% or more over the last 5 candlesticks or bars, this will be agreeable to that study. And then the unusual volume I use in conjunction, and that is the current bar volume is increased at least 30% from its typical period. So it's more relative to its average, and that makes sure that I'm not just getting the volumes of just a random spike. It's of like 100,000 volume shares traded in that 1 minute randomly. It kind of takes away that and puts it into more of a long-term period of time for like news catalysts and things like that. You can see this is where most of these stocks lie. And when I first started trading, I went to CAF's video of how to set up scanners, and I named it CAF. So that this is the first scanner I've ever set up, and this is the one that I took from his video of how to set up ThinkOrSwim scanners, and I've used it ever since. Literally, since day one, this is the one I've used every single day. So this is kind of like my bread and butter. And then if I go over the charts and look at this, you have your active watch list, which is something that you do manually, but then I have CAF, breakout, and then parabolic. So you can see that that CAF one is my go-to. And it's not that much. It's not that significant of a change. It's really not. It's really more about separating 1 or 2 little things that would maybe pick up a stock that one of the other scanners wouldn't pick up, and that's really the difference between finding an opportunity on a certain stock that maybe hasn't been seen yet, or maybe hasn't picked up on the major scanners yet, and really just make sure that you're really seeing the market as a whole in a bigger picture. I lowered the volume here on the stock to 150,000. It's because these stocks, while they may be slower movers, there still may be some opportunity there for maybe a gap fill or a swing play. I did raise the percent gain up to 6.5 instead of 5%. The shares still hanging around that 300,000, and their price at 40 cents is that minimum. So you can kind of see I still stick to the the standards or the the rules I like to trade with slight changes that mix it up a little bit. Now I can also, if you guys want to, share these as well. And parabolic is basically the exact same as my breakout scan, except for I added a parabolic study scan. I'm not really sure what the parabolic SAR means. This is something that, like I said, when we go and play around with some of these studies and scans, trying to figure out what they pick up. These are good for big quick moves from stocks that mostly you pick up from breakout scans, but they also pick up stocks that have different ranges to them, and it picks up on the parabolic scan of it. And these are the ones that usually have huge moves real quick on not necessarily a large amount of volume as well, but only at 300,000 minimum. And so for the lovers and losers, you have the pre-market and post-market scans. That you can use, and that's what I use for most of the time. Okay, that's why you have your personal need, your public, and then here you can see the percent gains, percent losers, gap up, get downs, like I was saying earlier. I never use the top 10, but if you're interested in that, that's just another set of scanners that can benefit you. Let's see if I can pull up the pre-market. Any special time you run your scans? Same time every morning? There's no specific time. I'm usually on between 8:30 and 9. You can do it before that. Very easily you can do it before that, but between 7 and 8. Typically, companies have announced. All the companies have not announced a news catalyst yet. News hasn't been dropped yet. A lot of volume is in the market. So between 8:30 and 9, about a half an hour before the market opens, is when I typically start scanning for real and looking at these today's potential plays. But if you look at lovers and losers, you can go to pre-market movers, and again, you can customize what your the different item sets on here that you can if you're interested in that. I just go with last price, like we're saying, net change, percent change in volume. Again, this is more of your individual preference. I like to sort by volume so I can see the biggest mover first, the most volumes first. These are typically the ones that you want to stick with today, like NBEV sitting at 100 million shares trading. You can see why we look at that. IGC, same way. By the way, we can talk about IGC. I think Dan was asking, I'm not sure if he's in here. Dan was asking if it's going to hit 10. If it breaks 9 today, it hit 12.75, but then waterfalled into close. So depending on how that's in pre-market, we're probably going to look at a dip here. I'm going to guess for that dip at about this 10:30 area. So we can go in tomorrow and see where it bounces from. But going in here and looking at this is pretty critical support. That this 10:35, 10:37 area. But anyways, so you have your setup scans, and again, you can play around this, and this is the part where it starts to get more individualistic and really about what you like to do. For instance, I love looking at like after hour movers and news that drops after hours, so I can be prepared for what comes the next day. And so for night scans, it picks up after hours percent change. After close, greater than 3%. So it's basically an after hours version of the scanners that we already use. And so here's all the after hours movers. And this is how we go and look at night scans. And so these work on after hours, and it really helps out when doing like nightly watch list and just analyzing the market for in preparation. This type of study, and you can also find this in the post-market leverage and losers section, this type of research actually helps you out. I can't change the setup scan in the upper left to change this. So you want to change it to, you want to start a new scan, or do you want to just load one that's already there? So you go to the right, so just go across here to the right, and you see these. If you want to reset, it's here, but right below it there's another menu. It says show, and you click this menu, you can load scan query on the right side, and then you can go from your personal scanners that you set up for yourself, and then you can start going into the public scanners that ThinkOrSwim has for you. Yeah, these things are kind of tricky because it didn't really show you what it has, inside these tabs, and so sometimes I get confused. I even still get confused if I'm trying to load another one, which one to click. So usually it's the top one. If I'm trying to load one, I have to go back to the bottom one. And so you can see that there's obviously just a copious, just adequate amount, almost too many. You could argue that it's just too many to look at on any given day. But it's certainly it gives you the flexibility of finding your trade style and setting up scanners that will hone in your trade style and really fit your trade strategies and what you want to look for. But that's the main three. I mean, I use CAFs, I use the breakout scanners, and I use the parabolic outside of the normal trade day. But you can see that not much is changing in the way that I set the scanners up. It's all about maybe one study here or there, or maybe it's just a change in volume range that will pick up extra stocks that I don't typically see anyways or already from the other scanners that really help out in finding all the right opportunities and making sure I'm in the best possible position to take advantage of those opportunities. And again, this is all just me. This is the way I set my scanners up. It's pretty basic. I mean, I'm not adding a bunch of. You guys already know my trade style is I don't use any indicators, so I don't need to go in and put you can, but I just don't. I don't. You can put in VWAP scans. If you really want to start looking at VWAP, Pete saying, do you think you can? I don't need to refresh. I don't need to refresh my scanners. They update themselves. Sometimes I do like to maybe like reload the scanner or reload my platform if it's acting slow and things like that. But that's unrelated, to the actual scanners. The scanners should update by themselves. I couldn't tell you about the specific time. This one says every 15 minutes. I really couldn't tell you because I don't really, pay attention to when a stock's added or taken off. I kind of just, I just rotate through them, and I'll notice if one's added. I just don't know how long ago or how long it's been there, and so I couldn't tell you how long the span is in between. Is there a source of definitions for the preset scanners? There is. So ThinkOrSwim, if you go on, you can either go through the login, but I typically just Google it if I need the answer quick. And if you type in ThinkOrSwim study filter and then type in whatever it is exactly how it's labeled, they have a set of different websites, different links have different sets of definitions that you can go and look at for each one. So if I went and Googled ThinkOrSwim scanner FW underscore D, if I typed all that in, I could literally type that into the search bar, and somebody, I think either ThinkOrSwim's actual main website or somebody who uses these or provides definitions will provide that definition for you. I have to do that all the time because there's so many different ways so many different studies and filters that and it doesn't give a detailed explanation right then and there. So oftentimes, if I do want to play around, I do have to go and look at what each scanner means individually as I Google it. But yeah, so there is information out there. I just don't know if there is a way to look at it on this actual ThinkOrSwim platform. I'm not too sure about it. I mean, there's more functionalities in ThinkOrSwim than I'll ever probably know. Is there preset scanners just for day trading? So you can go to, I mean, you can go to the public area, and this percent gainers. Percent gainers, you can see there's some of the same stocks that we trade on these custom scanners are popping up here, like MBEV, IGC. So percent gainers, and you can see these purple ones, these purple symbols beside them. These are the popular ones that people like to use: gap up, gap downs, market maker movers, new yearly highs and lows, like we were saying earlier. And so as you scroll through these public preset scanners, the purple circle image, next to these scanners are the ones that typically most popular. You can even search by industry. But yeah, really all comes down to preference at the end of the day. Once you have your your base set up for the custom scanners, there's 3 critical components. Everything else is based off of strictly individualism. Pete says, never knew the little arrows right next to the scanners name scroll through all your scanners. Oh yeah, no. If you just hover over the little arrow, and it comes up with all of them. Now, this is what I was saying earlier. If you're really into the ETFs or futures, there's scanners for that already set up for you, so you don't have to be an expert in custom scan building to really take advantage of this platform. Which is why I think this has got to be the single most greatest trade platform on the market right now. But all right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Hopefully you guys had was able to pick a few things up, and maybe some questions were answered. Does anybody else have any questions before I wrap this up? Is there any difference between mark and last? The mark and last is the difference. I believe is the difference. This is from my night scans. I picked this up from CAF. I don't really see a difference either in the last and the mark. I know the last, which is literally the last stock price, and the mark, I think, is the difference between I think that is it the last plus the difference between the bid and ask, I believe is what it is. There's not much difference in the two. But yeah, my filters are mixed between mark and last. They seem to be doing the same thing. I think the last is just strictly, literally the last stock price traded, and mark is just the difference between the bid and ask plus last. Yeah, so because and this is why it's so close, because the difference between bid and ask is typically 1 cent or 2 cents, plus the last doesn't make much of a difference when scanning for these stocks in that range. All right, guys. Thank you all very much for your time. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to send me a private message, or just shout me out here on the Discord app. Hopefully, I answered everybody's questions, and I will definitely get this recording uploaded, and we can send it out. And I will actually put hyperlinks in my presentation, so you guys can go follow me on social media. Yeah, that's pre-market mover. That's about a half hour out is when things start getting serious with volume and things like that. So the pre-market scanners is where it's at for lovers and losers. I gotta pump myself. I gotta pump my social media, get those followers up. Instead of pumping stocks, I'm gonna be pumping social media. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Thanks for listening.